Okay, horsemanship vlog for, whoa, got right there. Horsemanship vlog for, I think today is the 22nd or 23rd. It's a Saturday. I had an interesting day yesterday. Actually, the little horse was pretty good. There was some stuff that came up, but she kind of had to run around for a few minutes, but I think she just kind of been building to that. I don't think that was too, I just remember, she did get one spot where she was pretty stuck and she was like bucking and kicking out. Naughty little child. But I think actually if I had just been on the outside of the round pin, she probably wouldn't have done that. Sometimes I think about that because it would have been a lot easier if I had had somebody standing on the outside of the round pin. So I just might do that. If that comes up today, that might be how I handled it. I don't even really remember what got her. Actually, I don't think it was anything. I think it was just she was walking her. I think it was just a feeling she had. I think she needed to let some energy out, and then she was a little bit put out that I was there to be like, well, you can't actually go through the fence. Like, that's not gonna work. And once she kind of let some of the energy out, she was fine. So I was like, I kind of blew that off. But it'll be interesting to see how Wyatt is today, because yesterday I could tell Wyatt was in a crabby mood before I ever even went to catch him, because he was playing with his blanket. I realized when I went to take his blanket off that he hadn't been blanketed correctly, and I think that's why he had so much consternation about tugging at the front of his blanket. It was strapped wrong, so it probably wasn't too comfortable, and it was a little late in the day. I mean, it was cut. They didn't take the blankets off yesterday because it was overcast, so I went to take it off, and I could tell he was he was glad I took it off, but he's just crabby. I brushed him in his stall. That made him crabby. He was just crabby. He was crabby towards Poncho, and he's hardly ever crabby towards Poncho. So I was like, I'm not even getting this horse out until, and then he went after Angus, which he, in the pen. So I think this was kind of like the thing where things, the spot where, things kind of didn't, it just brought some stuff up for him. He went after Angus. I didn't have anything in my hand besides a pitchfork, so I actually tossed a pitchfork at him, and I'm pretty sure a hoof pick. I wouldn't have tossed a pitchfork at him. There was no other way for me to be like, hey, let that go. And I did hit him. It didn't hurt. It didn't even scare him that much, actually. I think it just got the message across. And I think somehow he thinks that dog, based on what he did later, I don't think he realized that I'm the one who did it, not the dog. I think he thinks the dog did that. And it took him a while to let that go, because what happened when we went, sorry, I just saw one of my friends walking their dog. Some things in Chico don't change. It took him a while to let that go, which I think maybe what I've been doing about the last few days is horses that like carry things from one day to the other. Yesterday I finally said, of course they carry stuff from one day to the other, or they wouldn't be able to take the good stuff with them. So of course they carried yesterday into today too. Like, that makes complete sense. They're not going to only take the good stuff and not the bad stuff. If it applies in one area, it applies in both. So, here's what happened though. He went after Angus. Angus ran off. I tossed the hoof pick at him. It did hit him. Now, granted, he was not hurt. He was more startled than anything else. I don't even think he knew what hit him. I just think a thing fell from the sky, and I think he thinks that dog did it somehow, based on how he felt later. So then it was finally time to go take him. But see, I don't think he would have ever gone after the dog if he hadn't been crabby to start with. Although maybe the stuff with the stuff with the dog has been building. It had gotten a lot better for a while, and then the last little bit, it seems like it's been worse. I do know that there was a point where I was bringing Angus out like every other day, and I've been bringing Angus with me like 6 days a week, because Abby is so gimpy, and I might as well get Angus out. So maybe that's part of it, is that he's been around Angus more. and and there was another incident with the dog. This is another thing where I'm like, I swear they take this shit from one day to the other. He did have a dog try to come in the round pen, and he charged that dog, and he's been bad ever since then. He's had real bad feelings about dogs. It's like whatever feelings had been below the surface rose to the top when that happened, and I've been having a hard time with them with the dogs since then. I do think that there's a couple new dogs in the situation. There's like 3 new dogs, and 2 of them really worry him, and the third one is not well behaved either, and it's the third one that actually tried to chase him a little bit. And that dog obviously has problems too, or it wouldn't be chasing the horses. But point being is after I'm like, back to my story. I do think that's worthwhile backstory. So after we get through this, I take him to the round pen, and boy, as soon as he was okay when he was walking. He was a little bit crabby. I got about 2 laps each way at the walk, but as soon as I asked that horse to trot, he just left me, and he went, and Angus was closer to the fence than usual, and Angus, get back! Angus doesn't have much room back there, and he's feeling like he needs to crawl up to the front seat. Not that there's any room in the front seat. So he went right after the dog, which was strange. Now, I did have Angus in a different spot than usual because I'm working on some stuff with the dog. I probably spent 15 minutes trying to get him to let go of that at Liberty, and he just wasn't. And I knew that I had a limited amount of time because, it's like, that's a community round pen. I can't be in there forever. And he just wasn't working. He wasn't letting it go, and I wasn't feeling like I was being effective, and I was switched stuff up, and it wasn't my timing. I mean, actually, I think my timing was better than usual. So finally, I just put him on the end of the lead rope because I was like, this isn't my preference, but at least I can get him. At least it will change the dynamic. I'll get some kind of change. So that brought up some consternation because the first time he wanted to go after the dog and he couldn't go after the dog, he really wanted to rear, which I wasn't surprised about because he had already offered. Hadn't reared, but he had already offered to rear. So he had to have a couple really big rears in there. There was at least 2 or 3 big rearing fits all back to back. It was kind of really all the same one. Just where he just kind of doubled down on how he was feeling. I think it was a moment when things came to a head. But then, once I got him through that spot, he actually stopped thinking about that dog entirely. And I hardly ever saw his little eyes or ears flick over there, and he stopped trying to run off. So, a huge change, right? And then I was able to get him to walk, trot, and canter both ways around the round pen after loose. After I had done that. So it probably took half an hour or so to really get him to a better place, and then I spent maybe another 15 minutes just trying to seal the deal, like, you really could just stay with me. That's all I was asking, was you to just stay with me. So I just think it's interesting. I really feel like all those things for him were coming to a head anyway, and I wasn't dancing around it. That's something that's shifted for him, is I've been dancing around things less in the last 6 months, and or at least some things. There's other things I'm definitely still dancing around. And then also been working on the dog stuff, and just things change. Like I think he's carried a lot of bad feelings about dogs with him for a long time, and this was just the moment that it sort of came to a head. And instead of I made a decision yesterday, just because of the way the scenario was, that I was going to leave that dog where he was. The dog was being super, and I was going to take that as an opportunity to work through that with that horse, because otherwise I'm just leaving it in him. If I had moved the dog, I was just leaving his bad feeling he had in him. It would have solved the problem, it would have solved the problem in the short term, but it wouldn't have solved the problem in the long term, which is that Wyatt hates dogs. He does not like dogs, and he wants them out of his space all the time. So I just think there's so many, I can't even articulate all the different layers. Like, I think he has a thing with Angus specifically for being kind of in his space and frantic. I think he doesn't like dogs. He's had a couple bad experiences. He did slip and fall several years ago because a dog was chasing him. I don't know if he's, I don't know if it, sometimes I forget that happened, but I think that's in him somewhere, whether he remembers the accident, because he was hurt afterward. It was a bad fall. I had to call the vet out because I was literally, like, I thought he was going into shock. He was so, he got so weird. I mean, I guess he kind of, in some ways, he like, started profusely sweating. He didn't really want to walk. And he was unsound for like 3 or 4 weeks. So, not that, anyway. So, he's got some damage about dogs that he's clearly been packing around and kind of stuffing down, and it just came up. And I've also been thinking about that a lot, about the kid. Like, there's things that she does where you're like, oh, that was really about this thing that happened yesterday. Or once in a while, I've had a couple times where I'm like, oh, she's packing something around and it's going to let loose. But with her, I don't want to necessarily get so direct about it. She's too little. So I might leave it go a day or two, knowing that it's going to come up in a day or two. It kind of depends on what it is, because you don't want to pick, you don't want to get nitpicky with a long yearling like that, a baby. She's not even 2 yet. I'll probably say that for once a week for the next, until she is actually 2. So I'm just thinking about that, because I really do think, and Karen and I have been talking about it, about how they pack stuff from one day to another. We're talking about a couple of her horses that have a tendency to do the same thing. So I just think it's so important to acknowledge that they're going to do that. Oh, Angus, I was in total control the entire time. So anyway, yeah, I feel like I had more to say other than the narrative of the story, but that was a pretty big aha moment for me, thinking about how they really do carry stuff, and just little pieces. I think that's another thing. I made this I made a popular Facebook post last week about trying to slow down and trying to really focus on their feelings. Well, one thing that happens when you do that is that you find out they got a lot of bad feelings in there, and then you have to way slow down. Like, I feel like I haven't done much with the baby in the last 2 weeks because we chipped off a layer at the clinic, and now I got to deal with what was underneath. And she's not consistent because that's the nature of a young horse, a horse her age. But I'm at the point where I'm like, cool. We led to the round pin and back, and it didn't go south. Like, there are some days when that is a victory, and I really have been feeling like I haven't gotten much done with her as a result of all that. But then I think, well, what's the alternative? Like, her blowing up, her rearing, all this shit that I don't really want to become part of the behavior pattern either. I did get her, I had her for a little walk the other day, and today I want to set some things up differently. Today I've already abandoned any hope for a walk because it's Saturday and you never know what you're going to get on Saturday. So could be fine, or today, just because it's sunny, I'm probably going to get a lot of people out there. Hopefully not too many Hollands, because it did rain yesterday, and that typically will. Of course, we had a bunch of Hollands last weekend. There's a trainer that came back to town, and he's been bringing clients out the last couple of weeks, so and that did definitely affect the atmosphere last week, because a couple of the horses he's working with are a little troubled. One of them more than the other one. Okay, I gotta end my video.